Good morning, everyone. We are here again today to talk with you before our workshop next week. And so let me just welcome Diana. Thanks for coming.
I'm glad to be here. It's a good topic today.
It's a really important topic today. And so we want to invite you. First of all, let's ask a question. Hi, ladies on Instagram. We're talking today about how to take a stand without losing your soul. How many of you find it hard to take a stand? Diana was just talking with me about having her car repairs not working out well and not feeling like they were servicing her car the way they should. And sometimes we have to take a stand. We have to take a stand about an issue. We have to take a stand at the restaurant. Our dinner isn't the right dinner, or our dinner isn't cooked right. We have to take a stand, with our children and say no, or we have to take a stand with our pastor and, disagree with him about something. How hard is it for you to take a stand at all? I just want to get a read of the audience, where those of you who are listening, pick me. Yeah. How many of you find it hard to take a stand at all? And then the second question, put it in the chat. How many of you find it only possible to take a stand when you're rip-roaring mad? Like when you don't care what people think, you're going to tell them what you think, or you're going to tell them how you feel. So that's the way you take a stand, that you kind of lose your integrity, maybe of some sorts, when you're rip-roaring mad, but then you can take a stand. Yeah, how many of you find it really hard to take a stand? Yeah, hard to take a stand when dad and child are working together against you, for sure, for sure. I take a stand all the time. I just become too angry when I do. Yes. Okay. This is a pattern that I noticed a lot with women I worked with when I was counseling them, is that when they would finally have it up to here over their nose, they would take a stand, but they would do it in such a way, it would be like a reactive explosion. And then what happens, and this happens to women more than men, and I'm just going to be really brutally honest with you. Your husband, your child, depending on how old they are, and your coworkers or your friends will think you're crazy. They'll tell themselves, oh, she's PMSing, or she's, going through menopause. It discredits what you have to take a stand about when you take a stand in a volatile way. And a man can do it easier than a woman, but when you do that, understand that what happens is two things. You've lost credibility. Like, why? I had one woman say, why do you only listen to me when I'm hanging out the window screaming at you, right? And he would listen to her, but he would do what she said. He would comply. Like, he would care, or he would hug her, or he would, fix the mess that he made or whatever. But then he wouldn't change, because in his mind, she was just having a bad moment. She was crazy. Whatever it was, he discounted the reality of the total stand she was taking. And so we want to really talk about that, because it hurts you and it hurts your issue when we take a stand this way. And our whole culture is very reactive about taking a stand, whether they're taking a stand about political issues, whether they're taking a stand on transgender issues, whether they're taking a stand on abortion issues or immigrant issues. I mean, there are a lot of issues that are hot buttons today that some people are taking a stand on and losing their soul. Because as I read the scriptures, Jesus says the two most important commandments aren't what you think about certain issues. They're to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And so when we take a stand, how do we take a stand? And can we do it without demeaning and disrespecting someone else?
Leslie, for our audience, could you describe what we mean by losing your soul?
Yeah. Lillian says, wow, I didn't realize that's how they see it. That's exactly how they see it. That she's off her rocker. Take your meds, Mom. Get your hormones in order, Mom. They don't see it as credible. And that's where you lose your voice, because it's just Mommy's angry versus Mommy's making a good point. So what was the question?
Could you define for our audience what we talk about, like taking a stand? What does it mean to lose your soul?
So I think so for me, as we were writing these titles, for me, it means losing your integrity, losing your compass, you losing your true north. Who am I? So if I am if I am identifying, if I'm self-identifying as a godly woman who walks in truth and love, if that's who I want to be, those are my values, those are my virtues, those are things that are important to me. And then I go act like a crazy, mean-spirited, wicked witch of the West because you wronged me, or I don't agree with you about this issue. And so I demonize you, and I disrespect you, and I, talk over you, and all of that by taking a stand on an issue. I don't think that's congruent. And so I've taken a stand, but I've lost my soul.
Thank you. And I think this is especially important for us as women, as you said, because we are going to be undervalued to a greater degree when we show up in those ways than a man would. For a man, it may look like he's powerful, he's in control, but for a woman, like you said, it looks like we're crazy, hormonal, PMSing. And we as women want to represent ourselves very well, very strong. We have worked very hard to be at the place we are at in society and at this place in time. And we want to represent ourselves well.
And I think for some women, they have a good virtue. So we call them, biblical virtues inside. The Holy Spirit tells us that we're to embody the fruit of the Spirit, and love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness. All of those things are good things. And they combine into a virtue called long suffering, which oftentimes will bite you in the butt when it's against your values and virtues. So I am, I want to be patient with the faults of others, for sure, that God calls us to do that. But when the faults of others are negatively impacting me, then I have to take a stand of how much I am going to tolerate the faults of others, right? And how I'm going to do that matters. But some of us are afraid to take a stand because we think it's ungodly, like, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I don't want to make them feel bad, or, I don't know if I know how to say it right, or, I'm going to make them mad, or they're not going to like me anymore. So then we have all this resistance internally because we are people pleasers and we fear man more than we fear God until we don't. And then we just get done. I'm done. And then we just explode. How many of you would admit that I have done that? And I know, Diana, we've talked about it, you've done it. And so let's just be real. We've all done it, but it doesn't feel good at the end. You feel very good at the moment. Like, I told them off. And then later, those values, if they're inside you, the Holy Spirit is saying, not sure you should have handled it that way.
Or maybe sometimes, Leslie, this just comes to mind specifically about events that have happened to me over the last week, that sometimes we've maybe been not speaking up where we should, and then we take a stand where we shouldn't, where it's not that important, and we're not representing ourselves well.
Can you give us an illustration of that? Like,
I can give you
that.
Well,
We're just being real here, ladies.
I had two experiences, and I had the car thing, which we can talk about. But then I had to go pick up a prescription, and online it said they were open till 9:00. I went and the pharmacy was closed at 8. And I didn't go off on them, but I probably wouldn't have said these things had I not had such a frustrating weekend with being taken advantage of with the repairs of my car. But I spoke up and I said, well, your website says you're open till 9. And I've been waiting to get here to get this, and I'm concerned you're going to send it back. And I felt like they didn't deserve what I said to them. They were getting ready to leave for the day. She says, well, it's open, we close at 8, you can come back tomorrow. And so when they came out to the parking lot, I said, I'm really sorry that I apologized for the manner in which I represented my concern. And she said, oh, it's okay. But I just felt like that wasn't the right, didn't need to be said. It didn't need to be said then, and it didn't need to be said by me. A simple question like, oh, you're closed. But for me, the frustration of the week and of being, well, we'll just talk about it. I have been in for my repairs 3 times for my car. And I looked at the man and he said it was okay to go home. I had advocated all along the way. Things kept breaking. I had a suspicion that they were doing it while they were repairing something. And as we talked earlier before we started, I ended up on the highway with a tire almost coming off because they did not put a nut on the bolt. And it was a dangerous situation. And so while I advocated well to them for that, I did not recognize that I was still frustrated about all of that. And so a couple days later, go into the pharmacy and I'm still stressed out. And so taking a stand in one way, but not mediating the stress of what you're undergoing can also cause you to not, I mean, I wasn't horrible. You know what I mean? I wasn't awful to the pharmacy workers, but it wasn't who I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. But one of the things that you're saying, Diana, and this is, I've just done a bunch of videos for our Conquer members. If you're not a Conquer member, it's a membership group that is only open twice a year. It's not open now. But I did a bunch of videos on what does a healthy woman look like? So those will be coming out in October and November, December. But one of the things that we teach women, and now we're teaching you right now, is this noticing. I noticed that I was not myself. I noticed that I didn't do my best, didn't handle myself in the best way. I want you to know that you can be as healthy a person as you want to be. And that's one of our goals. And we're going to be teaching you some tools on how to address the lies that you believe that you've been taught as Christian women, which all of us have been taught, like dying to self and you need to suffer for Jesus if you're in a bad marriage. All these kind of lies, God hates all divorce, all these lies that you've been taught that are not true, but we've been taught them. Now, there's some semblance of truth to some of it, but there's not biblical truth to support what they're asking you to do. And I will share all that in the workshop next week. Diana, if you could put the link for the webinar up there right now, that would be great. But we want to teach you more than just, how do I fix my husband? You can't fix your husband. We want to teach you how to get well. How do we get healthier, even if our husband is unhealthy? Because your kids need one healthy parent. So if you're trying to stay in this marriage, you might not have a great marriage, but we want you to be a healthy woman. And so one of the things that you must begin to do in order to get healthy is to notice. Like, notice how you're feeling. Notice what bothers you. Notice that, hey, I didn't speak up because I was afraid. I'm curious about that. Why don't I know how to speak up? Or why was I afraid to speak up? Because it doesn't matter how healthy you're going to be. You are never going to be a perfect person. Just like every single day, at least I do, and I know Diana does, and I imagine all of you do. How many of you every single day before you leave your house, you at least look in the mirror one time, right? And the reason that you look in the mirror one time is because you know that you are not going to wake up out of bed looking your best self. You're just not, right? Nobody does. And you don't shame yourself for that. You just know that. And so you're going to go to the mirror and you're going to notice, how much work do you need today? Do you need to, take a whole shower and wash your whole hair? Or did your hair turn out okay sort of today? Sometimes my hair is like straight up and it needs to be totally wet down. And sometimes it's okay. I can just kind of fluff it up. So you know what you need to do, but you can't do it until you notice. And so this noticing, this self-awareness piece is so important if you want to live in integrity, in alignment with who you are. Because this is who I want to look like, I don't look like this without taking some notice of when I don't look like this, right? And try to be, now I can't look completely opposite than when I actually have to work with, but I want to look like my best self, right? And I know you do too. And sometimes when we aren't looking our best self, we don't feel our best self, we're not functioning as our best self, then we're kind of going downhill. We, in terms of internally depressed and hopeless and helpless, and in the external world, in the way we handle ourselves out there. And so we want you to know what to do, the how-tos. We know we should, but we actually don't have the tools of how to do that. And so one tool that I just want you to do is stop, pause, and notice. Like, how do I feel? Am I getting anxious? And Diana noticed afterwards. I noticed I didn't handle myself well. That's okay, even afterwards. to notice. I let myself get too worked up over the car stuff, and I didn't get rid of all that stuff before I had the next stressor in my life.
And the truth is, I said to myself, this is not who I am. I did not like it.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, who do you want to be? And how do you find that calm and that inner sanctity of who you are in your soul, right? And I think one way that we overdo it is when we don't use our voice in the right places or in the right ways, and when we shove things down and hold on to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody on Instagram was saying, I noticed that I acted a certain way around a certain friend. So I don't have to deal with the chaos and confusion that results from taking a stand. I noticed I only behaved that way with her. So that's really a great noticing. That's a great insight. So those kind of noticing, then I would, next question, once you notice, then I would be curious, right? So even with your husband, we're gonna not go into all the details of this. We do this in our coaching groups, but even if your husband says something ugly to you, you could take a stand and say, you can't talk to me that way. Now you don't have the power to control how he talks to you, right? Or you could say, I'm noticing that he's being really mean right now. I'm noticing that he's lying to me right now. I notice, and what do I want to do about that? How do I want to confront that? And you have choices there. But until you learn to notice what's happening in you and notice what's happening out here, we talked about it yesterday, the internal and the external, you're going to just react to everything. And reacting either internally by shutting down or stopping your voice or blowing up and saying the wrong thing you wouldn't be here if that's who you want to be, because this would not interest you. So that's not who you want to be. But you have to learn how to do these things. Yeah, Lorraine says we start on the wheel and go faster and faster and faster because the world says to keep going. One of the things that I've learned probably in the last 20 years is that productivity is not a fruit of the spirit.
That's a good one.
God doesn't care how much you get done. We think, oh, I had a good day. I'm a productive person. I'm really doing it good because I got all my to-do list done, but I was yelling at my kids and I was totally dysregulated doing it, right? No, God doesn't care about how much you got done.
That's a golden nugget, Leslie. That really is a great takeaway. Productivity is not a fruit of the Holy Spirit. And what is it causing you?
And what does it cost you?
Yeah.
What does it cost you? For me, what it costs me to get it all done is it cost me quality time with my kids. Because I was so busy getting it all done, I didn't have time to play. I didn't have time to talk. I didn't have time to do certain things. I did have time. I didn't notice that I was spending time getting things done instead of building stronger relationships. Right? And so these are the kind of things we want to teach you. And we'll start, we're teaching you this now. And so let's talk about, how do we take a stand? How do we notice this is really bugging me? Or, hey, I don't agree with this. Or, hey, I don't like this. How do we notice that? And then how do we make a decision? Is this something I need to speak up about, or is this just something I need to be aware of? Like, I'm noticing that I don't like seafood. I'm not going to go to seafood restaurants when my girlfriends go out to seafood because I don't really like this stuff and I don't want to pay $25 for a meal I don't like. I don't have to tell them all this. I'm just noticing. Okay? So it's not like you have to take a stand. I'm never going to seafood again, but notice. And then other times you might notice that you're in a church that's teaching stuff that is off or doesn't feel biblical. And it might be that you notice, I do have to have a conversation with the pastor, a curious conversation, not a take a stand conversation, but I noticed that you said this at church and I'm wondering, I took it to mean this. Is this what you meant? Because even pastors from the pulpits can say stupid things, right? And I have gone to my pastor and said, did you really mean that? And he'd go, no, I was stupid, and I've said stupid things. So give him a chance to reflect and notice what he said.
So noticing what's not okay for you Sometimes we don't know that right off the bat, but we may get a feeling that something's not right, or we may feel confusion. So I love what you said about getting clear about what's not okay with you, what doesn't work for you. No more seafood.
Mhm. Yeah, or or no more, whatever it is, no more. I don't know what it would be for you. For me, this is what's not okay for me anymore. No more rushing. Rushing. Again, wait a minute, I got to do this. I got to do this, and I have stressed myself out rushing and not shown up as my best self because I rush. So I leave myself far more margins now than I ever used to, because I know that I don't do rush well. And that isn't a high value of me to get more done anymore, because productivity is not one of the fruit of the spirit. My idea is to show up well and be fully present. And whatever I do well, but I might not get as much done that way.
I love that.
So we would love to turn this over to questions. Who needs to take a stand on something and wants some help? Who needs to take a stand on something and needs some help? And if you do, put it in the chat. Or if you're afraid to put it in the chat publicly, because this is a public Facebook page or public Instagram, you can email, I don't know how they do this. They email it? Do they email it to lesliebernick.com/question? lesliebernick.com/question. And then that will bring up some sort of form. You can put your question in. All right. So ask your question, and we want to help you learn how to do this. So who has an issue that you need to take a stand on with someone? Give us a little bit of explanation why it's hard for you to do that. And so if we're going to take a stand on something, I'm going to assume most of you here are Christians, and most of you here hold some Christian values. So we're going to say that we want to be calm when we take a stand. We want to be firm, because when you're wishy-washy, people don't know where you stand. And we want to respect that they may not agree with us. They may not like our stand.
Right.
How do we do that? How do we take a stand about something for ourselves, or about something that's an issue that we want to take a stand on, or something else? Anybody have a question about that?
I do have an example if you'd like me to give my example.
Yeah. So Beverly says taking a stand is pretty much stating a boundary. Sometimes it is, not always, but sometimes it is. And some men in our church have been grumbling about the wine in women's retreat served communion. I don't think women should do that. They don't think that. Okay. That's so funny. So Diana, what's your example?
Well, I have an example demonstrating what we're talking about. I told you about my issue this weekend where I had taken my car in, I don't know, maybe for the third time. And each time I had taken my car in, something else was broken. And I started to get a suspicion that, maybe these guys aren't doing such a great job, but I was at the mercy of getting my car usable. So when I left the shop. It's weird. They'd work on the car, then a week later, something would happen. And this was a huge safety issue. When I left the shop, I was driving home later at night, and the car was making a thumping noise. I was on a 6-lane highway going 3 different directions. I knew something was really off. So I pulled off into the grass and then crawled off the highway. And, God was merciful. Long story short, they had not put a nut on a bolt that was holding something mechanically related to the tires. So something was about to fall off, like in a bad way. So I crawled to the Lexus dealer and I had them do the diagnosis and repair. And when I called the shop that originally did the work, the man said to me, well, do you want to have it towed here and have us fix it? And by then I was angry enough to speak up for myself. I used the anger in an appropriate way, though. I said, no, very firmly, I do not want you to fix my car. I don't have any faith in your ability to do it correctly. What I would like is for you to pay for this repair. And then we went back and forth. He said, well, I'll pay for this, I'll pay for that. I said, no, you're going to pay for the whole thing. They're addressing all the things. And so then I said, and how is that going to happen? Nail down the details with me. How will you do that? Well, you'll send us the invoice. I said, okay, we'll handle that. Do I have to come into the shop? And so I managed it all, but was very firm. And so the first thing is know what you want. Know what's not okay. and what you're not willing to do any longer. Because had I been wishy-washy, and I got off the phone and my sister said, "What did he say to you?" I said, "Well, he acted like a scolded kid." She was listening, and she said, "That's because you knew your stuff." I labeled all the parts that were wrong. Ladies, I spoke like a man who knew what was under a car. It was pretty fun, actually. And I was grateful that I represented myself well. I had been kind all along and patient with them, but this time I was kind and firm.
Okay. Good example. Okay, so we got some questions here and we want to give you the tools to how to do that. Some of the questions are coming in the chat pretty fast, Nancy, so if you can grab some of those. So how do I take a stand? All right, so we're going to take a stand over the dismissive and demeaning comments along with heavy gaslighting when I speak the truth in love. It happens every single time, and it's so difficult not to react with a strong emotion after decades of it. So do you need to take a stand for yourself, or do you need to take a stand against what they're doing? Because taking a stand against what they're doing is probably not going to matter to them. You already have that history. You already noticed that they don't value what you say, right? You already know that. So this is really important. In Matthew 7, Jesus gives us kind of a strategy of how to do this. He says, first of all, don't judge other people. Don't assume, don't judge, don't make yourself better than anybody else. We're all equal here. So don't judge. Make sure your heart's in a good space. Take the log out of your own eye. If you notice that you're dysregulated, if you notice that you're in a bad space, this isn't the time to have a conversation, and then you're capable of taking the log out of someone else's eye. So you're capable of addressing something serious. He said, but if you keep doing that and someone is being mean to you, he said, don't keep casting your pearls before swine. So this first person, I think it's more, you have to take a stand against what he's doing to you, you can't keep casting your pearls and expecting him to do something different. He's already shown you that every time I say, ouch, I don't like this hurts me, he gaslights you, he demeans you, he dismisses you. And so that's like casting your pearls before swine. So you're not going to take a stand with this person about something you need from them because you've already learned that's not going to happen.
Right.
Does that make sense? So how might she take a stand, Diana, for herself, even if it's just internally?
Well, and this person said it happens every time.
Mm-hmm.
And the difficulty is not to react with strong emotion. So the first thing to do to take a stand for myself in a situation like that is to recognize this always happens. I'm not going to expect anything different. So my amygdala is not going to go crazy when it happens again and again, because this is something I expect and I know it's going to occur. And so protecting myself means, as you said, why am I going to cast my pearl before swine? I'm not going to open myself up to this harm any longer. So speaking the truth to myself would be, what does it look like to protect myself from someone who continues to dismiss and demean me?
And that's taking a stand. That's taking a stand for yourself. It's guarding your heart above all else. You're not going to share your heart with him anymore. Right. You have to guard your heart above all else. So you're not taking a stand verbally with him, but you are taking a stand internally. This is what I will do. I will not give my pearls to him anymore. And this is what I won't do. If he's gaslighting me or if he's demeaning me, I will walk away. I will not engage. I will not listen. I will not participate. I will not keep this cycle going any longer than he can make it go all by himself. Right? So that's where you would take a stand. Right? And the wisdom to know the difference. That's really part of what we teach. And so we want you to really think about that for you to continue to try to get something from someone who only gives you vomit. Why would you keep asking for goodness when he gives you vomit back? Right? And then at some point you might have to say, is it sustainable to even live with this person? Right?
And Leslie, that's noticing too, because if you're consistently experiencing this and your emotions are in an uproar, just because, even if you're protecting yourself, just because you're in the presence of this person, what is it costing you to stay?
And so there's where you would take a stand for yourself. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. And this was where we come up against that lie that I have to suffer. Come to the workshop. We will unpack all those lies. I will give you the verses. You will see them on the screen. You will have them in your workbook. Come to the workshop, and please come live, because it's a different experience being in this room and talking to us and being together and learning the Q&A. We're going to have a Q&A, and we're going to talk about how do you do this? How do you do that? And the Q&A will not be part of the replay. So if you don't show up, you don't get any of that. You don't get the chat. You don't get the Q&A. You just get the information. And you know what? You can get information anywhere these days. Now, my information is unique to me, but you can get information about this stuff on AI or, other places. But you don't always get the how-to. You don't always get the how-to. You don't always get the practice and to see it in action. And we want you to experience that in the workshop. So show up live, and I'm going to give a special gift to all of you who come. We're going to pick a name, both in the daytime session and in the evening session. And one of you will get a one-on-one coaching consultation with me. So it'll be a 45-minute Zoom call or 45-minute phone call, wherever you live in this world, you will get that. So just for showing up, you get entered into that drawing. I do want to say one more thing about the workshop, and then we're going to finish answering questions. I've gotten a lot of Instagram, like, it's at 7:30 Eastern time, but I live in Australia. Can I come? Yes, you can come, but make sure that you look at your time zone, because it's not 7:30 Australian time. It's 7:30 Eastern time. So if you live in California, it's not 7:30 your time. It's 4:30 your time, Pacific time. All right. So look at the time. It's noon Eastern time, just like now, and 7:30 Eastern time. That's when we'll go live. But if you live in a different time zone than on the East Coast, look at your time zone. Central time would be 1 hour earlier. Mountain time would be 2 hours earlier. Pacific time would be 3 hours earlier. And if you're in London and Australia and New Zealand and Africa, where we get people watching and listening to our workshops, I'm not sure what ways you have to figure that out, but I think you could Google it or ask AI, hey, if it's 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, what time is it where I live? And they'll tell you, and that's the time you show up. All right, let's go to the next question.
Okay.
My husband and I are starting a marriage class at our church while also considering separation. I need to put some boundaries to protect myself, and I want to stop doing for him the things he can do for himself. What is the best way for me to communicate this while being loving? I think this is a great question and a great opportunity for both him and for you. Any thoughts, Diana?
Yeah. I think the best way to communicate that is just very clearly by stating that while I have been, I don't know, we have an example of what maybe you've been doing for him. While I have been picking up your clothes around the house and making sure they're washed and clean for you, I'm no longer willing to do that. And as a result, I'm asking you, so I'm making a request, it's not a boundary. I'm asking you to notice that and to do that for yourself. I'll no longer be doing that.
Right. So I think this is a crucial thing. And whenever we're making a change in the dynamics of a relationship, it's going to cause a little tension, right? So when you tell your kids, hey, I'm not going to do your wash anymore, it does cause a little tension in the relationship, because you need to learn to do it for yourself. Or no, I'm not going to help you with your homework. You can do it. All of the things that you're going to do differently when you take a stand, if you've never done that before, is going to cause some tension. So it's always good to preface it with humility and saying, I've been thinking about things, and I think I have been over functioning in this relationship. And as we're making these changes in our marriage, and we're going through a kind of a rework of how we're going to do life together, or whether we're going to do life together. So now you've given him a little preamble, right? And you're not blaming him for being a slob or any of those kind of things. You're saying, and I've been thinking, and so I need to make some changes. And I think I've been over functioning. And I think I've been doing things for you like your mother would do instead of a wife. And I'm not comfortable with that anymore. And I think it's not good for me. And I don't know if it's harming you in some ways too, because it's keeping you more, dependent on me. And if we don't make it, you've got to learn to do your own wash, and you've got to learn to cook your own food, or whatever you're going to say no to. So I think you can be gracious and kind at owning things are changing. And these are the ways that I'm changing. And these are the things I'm learning. and this is what I'm now going to do, and this is what I'm not going to do, versus I've decided you are going to have to do your own wash. I think it's really important how you say it. And this is, again, what we will teach you a little bit how to do at the workshop, and invite you to learn deeper if you want to learn to do this, because this will bode well. It'll be easier for him to hear, and he still might not like it for sure, but it'll be easier for him to hear. Right? So those who are caught in a trespass, Galatians 6:1, you who are spiritual, restore such one in a spirit of gentleness. Whenever we speak to someone about something they're doing wrong, we need to be gentle about it if we can. And so taking a stand is humility of I'm changing. I no longer want to do this. So here's an example. When my husband retired early, I said to him, I understand you really want to retire, but I'm okay with that if you're willing to pick up the slack and be the house husband. Now, I was still working and I was the housewife, and he would do the outdoor work and I would do the indoor. I didn't want to do the indoor work anymore. If he was going to be home all day, he got to do the indoor work. So I took a stand. I said, this is what I need from you if you're going to retire. Now, he could have said no, but he didn't. So those are the kinds. But when they say no, that tells you something. All right. It tells you something like, well, how do we compromise this? You're curious, you notice. So these are the things that we want to teach you so that you can be healthier. You can model healthy or communication skills to your children. And if your marriage doesn't make it, you're much healthier if you have to move on and be in another relationship someday. All right. So I hope you got answered that question. I would like to learn how to, you're good at this, Diana. I would like to learn how to stop ruminating on the good times. I have prayed that I remember the relationship honestly, not black and white. How do I do that?
That's a great question. And I don't know who hasn't struggled with this when you've been in a difficult relationship. There's always good times, but many women decide that the bad times, the hard times, outweigh the good times. But our mind sometimes, when we're lacking, has this ability to want to, with fondness, remember what was good, and then our feelings follow. And then I think that leads to a lot of self-doubt. Did I do the right thing? But to stop ruminating on the good times is a clear choice. And one of the ways in which I work with individuals on this is to remember what it cost you and to write those things down. And as you start to recall and remember what it cost you to be in that relationship, you'll start having some memories. You keep a list of those. We are forgetful. That's why we have the history in the Bible. The Lord wants us to remember these things. So it's important to remember why you made the choices that you made and how you got to where you got. So in other words, I'm going to believe for this person that you don't make decisions lightly. And so there were probably some real strong reasons why you made the decision, if you did, to step out of the relationship, right? So remembering that is really important, because your mind is forgetful and your feelings will follow. And so when you start to remind yourself of the cost or the reasons you made the decisions that you did, write them down. You'll have to come back to it again and again, often, until you get to the point where you don't.
Diana, that is such gold. That's such a helpful thing. And I'm just going to share a story of a client of mine. He was an alcoholic who had really trashed his life. But he was sober for 25 years. And so he was in my work counseling with me about some other things, but he was telling me his story. And he said, I've got to get going. I've got to go to an AA meeting. I said, tell me why you still go to AA for 25 years. He said, because I cannot forget. He said, I cannot forget what alcohol does to me, because it's near Christmas time. And, I think, it used to feel so good to get a little high, and it's so much fun to drink with my friends and all the good things that alcohol did. And I have to be at AAA. I have to be at, Alcoholics Anonymous at least twice a week to remind myself, when I get into thinking about all the wonderful things that alcohol did for me, that it almost killed me. And if I ever start this again, I will die. And so I think those are the splashes of cold water that you need to add to your ruminating about the good times. is it's like an addict. I'm addicted to the good. Cocaine feels wonderful, I hear. I've never taken it, but I hear it feels really good. But it trashes your life. And so this is where I'm doing something that dishonors myself. And I'm only thinking about the fun times. We had great sex. He was so fun to be around, or whatever it was. Yes, this intensity is very trauma bonding. And that's why you have to bring to mind the whole story, the ugliness, the lies, the abuse, the damage. Remember that too, or you'll get deceived.
There's a couple tools that you can use for that. One is on our website. It's the Emotionally Destructive Relationship Quiz. And the other one is just pulling up a trauma checklist. And you will be surprised if you get a comprehensive trauma checklist. And if you've been in a really difficult place, at all the factors that you were experiencing that you didn't realize were connected to how difficult and the cost to you.
Yeah. I'm going to take a question here from the chat because I don't see it on my question tracker. And I think it's a really good question about this topic. How do we take a stand with siblings when they're abusive and mean? So you often have to take a stand with somebody who's abusive and mean, but my parents are deceased. They left their home in a trust in my name. I do have to split the profit when it's sold, but I am behind in getting the home ready. No one helps me. I'm on my own. I try my best to keep my distance, but I do get phone messages. If I run into one in public, it's nasty. How do I defend myself? I don't know that you have to defend yourself at all. You have all the cards here, right? Mm-hmm. You're the trustee. They can't make you move any faster than you're moving. So I think the real issue is that they're in your head, right? And they're persecuting you in your head. Bad sister, bad daughter, bad trustee, and you're giving them way too much power. And so it's really taking a stand internally of, I am not going to let their abusiveness, because you're not going to change it. I'm not going to let their words define me. I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. This is a lot of work. I don't have any help. And when I'm done, they will get their share. Any thoughts, Dan?
Well, this is funny. My first thought was, you're doing all the work, so you split the profits, but you also compensate yourself for all the work you did and all the aggravation. And that's a part of really being the executor of it. And so really, I think not allowing someone else to tell you what's right and what's wrong. You have to decide for yourself what's right, what's honorable in this, and and what you will do and what you won't do.
Yeah. And how do I defend myself? We have a phrase, it's not our phrase, but it's called JADE. You've probably heard of it, JADE. So justify is J, argue is A, defend is D, and explain is E. These are all normal things that you do in human relationships. But you'll find with destructive people and destructive relationships, when you try to justify why you spent the money here, or you try to explain, or you try to defend, or you try to argue, they will just come at you from a different point of view, and they will keep at you so that you find yourself in this crazy dance of justifying. Now you're the bad guy, they're the good guy, they're accusing and attacking, and you're justifying, arguing, explaining, defending. And of course, none of your reasons are acceptable to them. So they're just going to keep coming at you. And then you lose your cookies because you're so dysregulated and confused and upset. And then they say, and you call me abusive? Look at you, Miss Christian, right? Do not put yourself in that situation. So we tell our women, do not. When you see this happening, don't defend yourself. We think differently. That's what you would say. Don't defend yourself. Don't argue. Don't justify. And don't explain anymore, because they don't want to hear it. It's not like they go, oh, okay, now I understand. Yeah, no, I can't help you. I'm sorry. I put pressure on you. They're not going to go there.
I might suggest responding by saying, this could get done a lot faster if I had help. If you're not willing, maybe I could take part of your share and hire help, something like that.
Yep, that would be a good stand too. So would you rather me take some of your share and hire some help? So your siblings, I would put out a sibling email. Hey, I hear you're so you could be very empathetic. I hear you're disappointed that I'm not able to get this done faster. You're out of town. You're not willing to help. So how would it be if I took $1,000, from each of your inheritance and paid some people to come in and do the work. Now they have a choice.
Mm-hmm. Clear choice.
Yeah. So that would be a way of taking a stand as well. I can't do it all. This is how we could solve it. If you would like, I'm willing to do that. All right, let's go to the next question.
Okay.
Husband confessed to watching porn, mentioned it happened after a big argument. I've taken a stand, but the lack of trust and betrayal is crushing my confidence to have children and progress in this kind of marriage. What do I do?
Well, the first thing I hear is he confessed to it after we had a big argument. Who's he blaming here? We had a big argument, so I had to resort to porn? I mean, that's what I'm hearing. I don't know if you're hearing that, Leslie.
I don't know if the argument was about that. Maybe it was an argument that, hey, I don't want to have sex with you. And well, I guess I have to watch porn. It's your fault. I don't know if that was the whole conversation, but obviously he has a problem. And so this is a problem for him, porn, and it's causing a problem in your marriage. So I would, before I have any children with this person, I would say, well, what are you willing to do about your problem? Right? And if he's gaslighting you or he's stonewalling you or not willing to work on his problem, it's not a marriage problem. It's going to cause marriage problems if he doesn't work on it. But it's not your problem. It's his problem. Right? And if he's not willing to work on his problem, and I wouldn't set it up where you're trying to function for him, but just, hey, this problem will impact our marriage. So what are you willing to work on in this? And if he's not, and he's blaming you and it's excuse making or all of that, or you don't trust him, he's not a good partner to have children with.
I think porn is a big issue. I think one of the things that I believe is that porn is a heart of abuse toward women. And I think it will impact even more than the marriage. It will filter down and have an impact some way on the children as well. So it's a very serious issue. It's a mindset that just opens the door to a destructive, sinful household. That's all I can say. And it's way greater. I think the impact of it is way greater than our society recognizes, even in the church. It's explained away because everybody's doing it. And it's a big deal.
So the sexual relationship was made by God for two people to be naked and unashamed, to have total trust and safety with each other, right? Porn is a lazy way to not have a relationship with someone, but in your mind fantasize that you're better than you are. Because I've never watched porn. I think I've seen like a little bit of it, but I think that what I'm getting from people who have been addicted to porn, it's pretty much very male centric. It's very, the porn stars are fawning over the man as if he's God and he doesn't have to do any work. She wants him to do whatever to him, including hurting her because she is so thrilled by his touch or whatever. I mean, it's just objectifying women, demeaning women, and he can have all this in his mind without doing any work to have a real relationship with anybody. So it's a very lazy, objectified kind of situation. And instead of doing the work he needs to do to be a full person and engage with a real person in a relationship. And so I would just encourage you to gently, kindly take a stand and say, hey, this problem is not, it's like, hey, let's say you had black mold in your house. This problem is not going away. And unless we treat the black mold, I can't live here because it will make me sick, and it will.
Absolutely.
Right. And so this is taking a stand in a good way. I'm not demonizing you have a problem. I'm happy to, talk about it. I'm happy to, support you getting help, but it's your problem. And I am not willing to live in a marriage and have children with someone who has this problem if you don't want to get help. And that's his choice. So I think this is also part of a lot of your dilemma is you don't want to give him the freedom to say, I kind of like living this way and it doesn't bother me. Right? Because it's like, what? It should bother you. Why doesn't it bother you? It doesn't bother me, or I don't want to work on it. So leave me alone.
Also, porn isn't just a behavior, it's a mindset.
Yeah, it is.
Stopping the behavior doesn't address the mindset. And so the roots go deep, and there's a lot of work to do.
Right. Just like alcoholism, people can stop the drinking, but they don't really do the work. And so they're called a dry drunk, right? They still have the unhealthy patterns underneath all of that, even if they're not abusing alcohol anymore. And so I think what I would love to say to all of you, and you'll hear this in the workshop, is that we're all sinners for sure, but not all of us are unhealthy sinners. Right. And so your goal and my goal to help women and men who listen to me that I don't know about is for you to get healthier, for you to grow in Christ likeness, for you to put off the things that are harming you and put on. And for women, what we've been told to put off and put on are often strictly feminine qualities. So put off, being aggressive, and put on being submissive. But sometimes it's important to be aggressive. Sometimes it's important to be strong. Sometimes it's really, and the Bible doesn't discriminate that between sexes. And so as women, I think, been taught that passivity and compliance and having no backbone is godly, and it's not. It is God's will that you become strong. Strength and dignity are her clothing. Right. And so we want you, as married women, as single women, as divorced women, to understand that you may have been harmed by this man in your life, but you still have work to do so that you can be healthier. All right, here's one more question, I think. But before we do that, could you give us your takeaway from today? Are you getting a sense of what your stands on things might be? And are you getting a sense of how you might stand for yourself, or stand for something you believe in, or stand against something that you aren't willing to tolerate in a godly way, without losing your honor, without losing your soul, without losing yourself? Are you getting a sense of how to do that? I'm not sure what you mean. What about female friendships? He says I have really good friends. I think women need more friendships than men do. And definitely your girlfriends are important.
I think she's saying he has female friendships.
Oh, he has female friendships. Is that possible? I think it is. But I think it depends on the healthiness of the person. I think it's possible to have some female friendships. I have some male friends that are colleagues of mine that, I wouldn't share my heart with them, but I do have conversations with them that my husband's not present with. And, I think that if you can trust someone and you're healthy and you're aware that I'm crossing the line here in conversations, or I'm feeling attracted to someone and I need to pull back, just to be aware of that. If you're healthy and honest and strong, I think those are possible. Okay. What are your takeaways? I'd love to see them. Let me see some of your takeaways.
Loved hearing about rushing.
Yeah, we have choices and need to notice how to respond. I don't have to defend myself or explain. I love the email idea. Thank you. I'm glad you got that. Okay, what are your takeaways? What are your takeaways? We're all sinners. Yeah, we are. But sometimes that's held against you. Like, well, you can't hold me accountable because you're a sinner too. So what's the difference between a healthy sinner and an unhealthy sinner? And we've talked about this before, but a healthy sinner owns what they do. They don't lie and gaslight. They don't blame other people or deny what they did. They own it and they take responsibility for it and repent of it and change, right? Because that's not who they want to be, or that's not what they want to do. Let's take one more question.
Okay.
My husband allows me to voice my concern and my view, but he does what he wants. How do I approach this?
What was that again, Leslie? Oh, I see it. My husband allows me to. Okay. Oh. Okay. How do you approach this? I guess I would have a conversation by saying, I notice that when I share with you what's important to me or my perspective on things, it does not impact how you respond and how you behave. I would just get curious with him and have a conversation and see where his mind is at. What are your thoughts, Leslie?
I would start there. So I would say I notice there's a pattern here. Every time that you ask my opinion and I give it, it doesn't really impact your decision. And I'm curious as to why.
Mhm.
And I would just stop and let him notice that he does that, because he might not even notice that he does that. Right? And he might have a belief that my role is to ask her opinion, but my right is to get to do what I want. So that's a very typical belief in Christian homes, because I'm the head of the home. God gives me the right to be the leader, but that's really enabling selfishness, right? So you don't want to buy a BMW, but I want to buy a BMW. Do you think we need the money for our kids' college? But I think I want a BMW. I'm the head of the home. We get to buy a BMW, right? That's how it works. And you're just to submit. And that's the mindset and the lies that some men believe. If I were doing a workshop for men, I might talk about that. But it's just not true. It's not what the Bible teaches, that you don't get your way all the time by being the head. That's called selfishness in the Bible. And so I might just have some curious conversation to see if he's open to that kind of conversation, so that he might be more aware. You know, he might say, well, I'm the head of the home. That's my role. And he might take that seriously. He might not be misusing that. And to say, well, that doesn't mean that my input as your helpmate isn't supposed to be helpful for you, but I notice that you never see it as valuable. You listen to it, but you never see it as valuable in that it changes your mind. How come? And let him notice if he's reflecting on that, because that's what partners do for one another. Right? That's what good spouses do for one another. Like, I noticed that you were harsh with the kids. What was that about? Oh, I didn't notice I was harsh. What did you hear me saying? And it goes back and forth so that we can be our best selves. That's what a good marriage does for each other. So try that and see what happens. And if he doesn't respond well, then you know more. And if he responds well, like, wow, I never thought about that. My dad always did it that way, and that's just what I do. Thanks for telling me. I'm going to next time point it out again. That could be a win. All right. I think we have time for one more.
Okay.
I used to keep a very long list, but then the scripture says love keeps no record of wrongs. Made me tear it up. So is it biblical to keep a list?
Well,
I don't think it's biblical to keep a list, but you need to keep a list. Then why are you in a relationship with someone, right? So I think the issue is, but the Bible's saying if you keep throwing up someone's sin to them over and over again after it's over with and they've repented of it and they're done with it, then why would you be with that person? That's a broken relationship, right? But if someone is repeating an offense over and over again, even though they keep saying they're sorry, I'm sorry I'm watching porn, but I'm going to still watch porn. I'm sorry I'm watching porn, but I'm going to, and it's the same sin over and over again of deceit or porn or abuse, then I think instead of keeping a list, you need to take a stand. Are you willing to put up with this and live with this, or are you not? That's your decision. Their decision is already made. I'm not repenting of this sin. I'm not changing this. That's why the list is growing. So then you have to take a stand. Am I willing to? And sometimes for other reasons you might be, there's certain things that my husband's never going to change, and there's certain things I'm never going to change. And we just learn to live with it. That's part of marriage, right? And we don't keep a list. Like every time he doesn't put his socks away or whatever, I'm not going to keep a list of that. That's just him. Or whatever I do. I don't put my lemons in the refrigerator. And he doesn't keep a list. So I think you have to decide, what is your stand on whatever the list contained. Any thoughts about that, Diana?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between keeping a record of wrongs and having and remembering what someone continues to do to you that's harmful to you. A record of wrongs for me is, keeping score, and with each tally, I'm like just building up bitterness and resentment. And that's where I know that I haven't forgiven someone. And it's quite possible to forgive someone and to be grievous about what they have done and what it's costing you and them. And still remember that they haven't been accountable for what they've done. And they continue to behave in those ways. And that's where I think sometimes we get confused about the records of wrongs. Because remember what someone is capable of. If they haven't changed, again, why would you continue to invite that in? I had a friend I called and I said, I was chatting with her about something. She said, I don't know what to say to you, Diana. She says, we talk about this a lot, but you keep going back for more. You keep inviting that in, a destructive pattern with another friend. And she was right. Does that mean I have it, that I'm keeping a record? No, I wasn't noticing that I kept allowing myself to be harmed. So that's, I think, an appropriate use of keeping a reminder or remembering. Because if you're forgetful and you're really forgiving, that could be to your detriment, to be honest, if you continue to allow harm.
Right, right. And so you might need to write some things down for your own memory, not to throw it up in his face, but to say, I can see now a pattern of gaslighting. I can see now a pattern of lying to me. I can see now a pattern of dismissing my feelings because I didn't notice it before that way. And so it's a helpful tool to notice, but not to hold up in someone's face. It's to protect yourself. Absolutely. Anyway, we are at the hour. We're going to have to wrap it up, but thank you so much. We'll be doing another Facebook Live Monday at noon, and we're going to be talking about how do I live with a difficult person and stay strong and sane? How do I live with a difficult person? Because some of you are in that place. So we'll talk about that, but please sign up for the workshop at leslievernick.com/join webinar. I keep calling it a workshop, join webinar. And we will see you Monday and hopefully Tuesday. All right. Thanks, Diana. Have a great weekend.
Sure. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.